consistent timing. And guys, I mean, why is it necessary to understand God's time? Well, truly, it's like anything else. If you really love and appreciate a fellow human being, you would be consistently wanting to understand their movements and their timing, you know, when they'll be home, when they'll be good to work, etc., etc. And it's no different for God's timing. God's timing for us as Christians is critical, that we can relate to what he has in store for us in his word. If we truly are looking forward to the coming, the soon coming, I should add, of God and his Christ, then we must be in sync with his timing. And so without further ado, let's get into this topic. My God is consistent. Usually when you hear a topic like this, or for some, when they hear a topic like this, I should say, immediately what comes to mind is the prosperity gospel. Because I've heard that gospel many times, and they're always talking about your blessing is right around the corner and round the bend, and yet their blessings are coming every Sunday, and the bend never seems to appear for the masses in the pews. And that's not what God is about. And if that's the message that you're looking for, wrong place, wrong time, move along. But if we're here to understand what the scriptures have for us to understand about his coming, then you're in the right place at the right time. So God's consistency in time can be found throughout the scriptures, and we are going to take a trace of that right now. Our first and feature text for this morning is found in Genesis 15, chapter 13 to 16. And I'm reading from the NET Bible, the New English Translation. Then the Lord said to Abram, notice Abram, not Abraham, know for certain that your descendants will be strangers in a foreign country. They will be enslaved and oppressed for 400 years, but I will execute judgment on the nation that they will serve. Afterward, they will come out with many possessions, but as for you, you will go to your ancestors in peace and be buried at a good old age. In the fourth generation, your descendants will return here, for the sin of the Amorites has not yet reached its limits. Let's get right into it. At the point in time that God is speaking these words to Abram, he does not have any offspring whatsoever. Not even Ishmael is in the picture. And so doesn't it seem strange that God will be telling him about his offspring and that 4 generations would be in bondage and all that sort of thing? And it's like, but I don't even have a child yet, Lord. Yeah, that's the God we serve, because he calls the end from the beginning. It matters not if we fully understand what he's referring to at the point in time. Abram got a similar response to what Daniel got when Daniel was trying to understand what his visions were referring to. When in Daniel chapter 12, God said to him, Daniel, you will rest with your fathers and come up at the time appointed to receive your reward. Abraham is told pretty much the exact same thing. But could you imagine the confusion for Abraham at that point in time? There must be questions. And indeed, if as we read chapter 16 and 17 and so on, we see those questions being voiced. But I'm so old, and Sarah is old, and we cannot bear, and well, get Hagar, and But in this conversation, Abraham just stays quiet for the moment. He ponders on what God has told him, because he's telling him his seed will be in tatters. God told Abraham that for a reason, long before Isaac was even considered to be in the womb. Why? Because he, as the forefather of that nation, had to pass that information on to Isaac. And Isaac, in turn, passed it on to Jacob. Jacob passed it on to the 12 patriarchs. And the 12 patriarchs passed it on for generation after generation. And so we fast forward to the land of Egypt in the 4th generation. The babies that were being born, in fact, let me just back up one step back. Here they were in Egypt, just as God had announced to Abram. They were slaves and in bondage. And no one likes slavery or bondage. So obviously this was not a comfortable position. But what gave them the motivation to just go day in, day out in the hot sun, making bricks and building, pyramids and whatever, the cities of Egypt, was that story that was told to them by their mothers and their fathers at bedtime, in the daytime, at any time, that we will be redeemed from this bondage. When? Count 4 generations. Okay, that's not too hard for somebody who was living then. It's your great-grandfather, grandfather, father, and the son. From the time you hit that generation, the excitement would be just too much to contain. And so here were those Israelites. Yes, they're working, but they're whistling and happy. Even the Egyptians wondering what's going on with them, because they were excited. Deliverance is on its way, based on the stories that were passed down through the generations. But something happened. Right at the generation when they were expecting deliverance, instead of deliverance came a decree that all of the baby boys that were now going to be born of the 4th generation were to be, well, basically crocodile food in the Nile River. Could you imagine how the hearts of the mothers and the fathers and the people, the elders, everybody their hearts must have dropped? Because unlike us, they didn't have all this written scripture that could buoy us up when we down, and you could look to some passage for light on how God is moving and so on. They didn't have all that. They just had that God spoke to their great-great-great-great-grandfather and told them so by so by so. So now when Pharaoh decrees that all baby boys are to be thrown into the Nile and drowned, hope was fading and fading fast. But there was a couple who kept the faith. And you know the story. So we move on from that part. When they heard that Pharaoh's daughter had taken an Israelite and adopted him as her son, there was some redemption of hope once again. From a hopeless point where all the baby boys were being killed to one of the baby boys was now in Pharaoh's palace as an adopted son of the princess. And so cautious optimism replaced hopelessness. And Moses grew from 0 to 21. At age 21, found in the book of Jubilees, he went into the courts of Pharaoh. So he was now an official. Yay! Time for celebration. Because now, I mean, you could see the words that God had told Abraham have a chance of coming true. Because if we have one single Israelite in line for the throne, then that must be the way that God is going to save us, because he did it before with Joseph. When Joseph was taken out of prison and put on the throne, Israel was just, I mean, on top of its game, an Israelite ruling Egypt. And so they could deduce from that and see that this could be a real possibility that Moses would have been the Pharaoh one day. And of course, their slavery and bondage would have come to an end in the 4th generation, just as God said. But then, 19 years later, we know the story. So I'm going to bypass the fact that Moses killed the guy and all that. Instead of Moses being their deliverer, now Moses was running for cover in the wilderness. And so once again, high hopes have been dissolved. Because who else in that generation stood a chance of becoming Pharaoh now that Moses was, they didn't know where he went, but he was gone, hiding for his life. This God must have forgotten us. That's old fable stories that we heard from our fathers, bedtime stories from our mothers about deliverance. So you know what? Let's just chill, go with the flow, and just resolve to be slaves for the rest of our entire lives and every generation there is to come. Let's enjoy whatever we could and work hard. They were just at that point when fast forward the story again to the 80th year since Moses was born. So we're on the edge of the generation now, and still nothing happened. But God is consistent. And so on his time and his dime, he calls Moses at the burning bush. You know the story, so we'll move on from that. Here he comes walking with a rod. Meets his brother Aaron, who has been advised to be his spokesman and translator, and steps in, saying to the people he has come by the orders of God to deliver them out of Egypt. Well, what a laughable moment, because in their minds, deliverance had to come in the form of some army or something to defeat Pharaoh and his armies. I mean, even if it was the same Moses that they had such high hopes for, here he is coming again. Wow, where's his army? What was he doing out there for 40 years? Didn't you, at least gather some people to come and defeat Pharaoh to get us out of bondage? You come with a stick? Give me a break. So there was not much hope around that pie in the sky story that Moses was selling at that point in time. But God is consistent. God doesn't make a mistake. And so we know the story, and so we'll move on. From Exodus 12, where he says now, prepare the people. This is the first month. This new moon that I'm speaking to you on is the first day of the first month. On the 10th day, I want you to put aside a lamb. On the 14th day, you kill it. And on the 15th day, it's Hayo Pancho away. Even then, the people had doubt. Why? Because since Moses arrived to now, things didn't get any better. As a matter of fact, it just got worse. why did this man come back into our lives to just folly our situation? But God is consistent. It matters not what the people taught. God made a promise to a patriarch who was now dead. And even though the patriarch was dead, God is still keeping his promise because he's God. And so they didn't have much hope, but God was consistent. Long story short, he led them out of there. And by the way, with great wealth and riches, just as he told Abraham. Imagine slaves coming out of Egypt with multi-millions in gold and silver and everything else that you could think about that was considered riches back then. That was a happy day because God never goes back on his word. He's a consistent God. Now, my question to everyone is, are we? God is consistent. The question is, are we? Just for thought, don't answer verbally, just for thought, are we? Because you see, when things don't seem to go our way, as the case may be, and so on, we sometimes, like the Israelites, start to fly in God's face and where are you, God, and what's happening, and this and that. Or some people will say, well, you know, well, God isn't coming right now, or he didn't come, so let me go back to partying and thing a bit, and then I'll come in, you know, when it gets a little closer to his coming, I'll straighten out myself again, and so on. This kind of inconsistency that we human beings have is not of God. In Revelation 22, God says, let him who is holy stay holy. And the wicked, let them stay wicked. Let the righteous stay righteous. It's not a matter of you're righteous today, unrighteous tomorrow, righteous the following day. No, stay righteous, stay holy. Because none of us know if our number will call any moment. I could be speaking right now and just die. You all just hear silence and want to know if I mute. And that's a possibility, a real possibility. And so let us answer that question in the affirmative, guys. Let us, who are ready and waiting for Jesus' soon coming, please stay consistent, stay ready. Our God doesn't change. Jesus doesn't change. It says in Hebrews 13:88, Jesus, if you see it in orange, I've added that word there, the Christ, because it's not Jesus Christ like name and surname. It is Jesus, the Messiah. Christ is the Messiah, the anointed one. And I'm just saying that for those who may be new to our videos or information. Jesus, the Christ, the same yesterday and today and forever. He never changes. God stays consistent, and he has put two elements in the heavens above to prove that. I don't know if while you guys are looking at this picture on screen right now, particularly the side with the sun, that we can get a somewhat vision of what John the Revelator saw in Revelation chapter 15, where he saw God's throne before the sea that looked like glass. It is sea, it is water, guys. And that sea looked like it had flames in it. Here is what I would say is a good picture of what John was seeing. Of course, it pales in comparison because not the sun was standing in front of the sea, but it was God's throne. And so the brilliance and the brightness and add that to all the other brightness that was going around, that sea was looking ablaze. But hey, we're living on it, so easy best I could do. God is consistent. Psalms 89, 35, 37, NIV says, once for all I have sworn by my holiness, and I will not lie to David. Some versions say, I will not deceive David. Why? That his line will continue forever, and his throne endure before me like the sun. Just like Abraham received a promise about his offspring and generations and lineage, David received a promise from God that his throne would continue forever. Could you imagine when there wasn't a sitting king in Israel, how the children of Israel related to this text? Did God make a mistake? Did he lie to David? Absolutely not. He made it plain that he wouldn't do that. And we have the benefit of hindsight because we know that that throne is presided by Jesus, the one and only, of the tribe of Judah, son of David. So prophecy fulfilled. But look at the element he uses to ascribe his promise. He says, it will endure before me like the sun. Since Genesis 1, 4th day, the sun was instituted to keep time for years and days. And for 6,000 years, give or take, it has been doing that faithfully, not missing 1 second, not even a split second of time. And God compares his promises to that. On the flip, it will be established forever like the moon, the faithful witness in the sky. Boy, oh boy. The moon comes and goes in its various phases, month after month, without skipping a beat, not losing a second. And that's how we can keep up with God's timing, not by any astronomical or calculated calendar, but by these two faithful witnesses that God set up. And if we go with God's consistent elements, we can never go wrong. So today, it's all about understanding God's timing. What it's not about is decrypting numbers in the Bible. Oh my goodness, you could get a zillion videos if that's what you're looking for about cryptic numbers, and 13 means this and 17 means that, and all the other things that man comes up with that cannot be proven in one text. Far more for the Bible. No, this is not about cryptic numbers in the Bible. None whatsoever, because they don't exist. What the Bible has is dates of events that if we take a closer look at those dates, we would see a particular pattern that will point us in a direction to God's consistent timing. The first one we're going to deal with is the 17th of Tammuz. It is the Babylonian name designated to the 4th month of the Hebrew year. So right now we're in month 1. 4 months from now will be Tammuz. Specifically, we're looking at the 17th day of Tammuz. Let's understand from the next few slides what is so important and relevant to this day, the 17th of the 4th month.
And when the people saw that Moses delayed to come down out of the mount, the people gathered themselves together unto Aaron and said unto him, Up, make us gods which shall go before us. And for as this Moses, the man that brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we wot not what has become of him. And the Lord said unto Moses, Go, get thee down, for thy people which thou broughtest out of the land of Egypt have corrupted themselves. And Moses turned and went down from the mount, and the tables of the testimony were in his hand. The tables were written on both their sides. On the one side and on the other were they written. And it came to pass, as soon as he came nigh unto the camp, that he saw the calf and the dancing, and Moses' anger waxed hot. And he cast the tables out of his hands and brake them beneath the mount.
Exodus 32, 1, 7, 15, and 19. The backstory to this is, we all know the story of Moses and the Ten Commandments, but the backstory is this. 40 days prior, God chose these people to come and speak to personally, very similar like he used to do with Adam and Eve. His creation, his apple of his eye. They were now, I just brought you out of bondage. You guys will be so happy to come and line with me because, you know, of what I just did for you. You're no longer slaves, etc., etc. Well, okay, he was in for a different thought, even though God knows the beginning from the end, as we know, but just following the story. Please don't talk to us. Let Moses, the guy who came and took us out, let him come listen to you and, you know, and you tell him everything you want to tell him. We will listen. Okay, so Moses goes up. God says, I agree, no problem with that. I'm okay with that. I'm down with that. I really, you know, really wanted to just be one-on-one, but hey, no problem. So God does the next best thing. If you don't want to hear me verbally, I'll write you a letter. He wrote it with his fingers on stone that was custom chosen and cut for the purpose. Wow. That is a God who is trying to connect. He's sending a gift from heaven to earth for his chosen people. And look at this section of the verse carefully, guys. The tables were written on both their sides. On the one side and on the other were they written. If you look at all the scrolls in every prophecy, Ezekiel, Revelation, Isaiah, Jeremiah, you would see that on every single time a scroll that comes down from God, something is written on it. It's written on both sides. It's God's MO that he started right here with the 2 tablets of stone. No wastage of space. But what does this tell us? Well, for certain, when you see the movie, The 10 Commandments, or pictures of the 10 Commandments as we know it, even though the language is an English translation or whatever, it's not depicting what Moses brought down from the mount. And more so, When you hear certain people say they get a vision in heaven and see the 10 commandments that God wrote with his own finger, and they calling out that 4 was on one and 6 was on the other, and the 4th shone brighter than the other, is nonsense. Because if you have all 10 commandments written on the both sides, not meaning written twice, it was written once, then all 10 cannot be showing on the face side. And therein lies deception, because you didn't see the 10 commandments written with God's finger on stone. That being said, Moses is enraged because these people couldn't just wait 40 days, just 40 days. They were already ready to return to bondage. They are like some of us today. God is promising us something much superior, much better than what we are going through in this life. But yet, boy, I want to go to the mall. I want to still go to the movies. I want to still rave a little bit. That is more important than what God has to say. Something is wrong with that. But it's humans. They were humans. What is the key to this story is the date. Moses comes down and breaks the gift that was given by God. And as those stones splintered into small pieces, a precedent was set. What date was that? The 17th of Tammuz, the 17th of the 4th month. Note, precedent set. Let's see where it goes from there. And the very God of peace sanctify you wholly, and I pray, God, your whole spirit and soul and body be preserved blameless unto the coming of our Lord, Jesus the Christ. This is Paul's Moses speech to the people. Guys, don't drop your guard, not for 1 second, not for 1 minute. We cannot be going and coming. God doesn't operate with vice. Let's hold fast. Let's stay blameless until the coming of the Lord. 1 Thessalonians 5:23. Jeremiah 39:2 says, in the 9th year of Zedekiah, king of Judah, in the 10th month, came Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and all his army against Jerusalem, and they besieged it. And in the 11th year of Zedekiah, in the 4th month, the 9th day of the month, the city was broken up. This same information could be found in Jeremiah 52:6 and Kings 25:3. Notice it says the 9th day of the 4th month. The Jews to this day maintain that it was the 17th of Tammuz, or the 17th day of the 4th month. I am going to leave the verdict out on that, because what is written in the scriptures is clear. It was the 9th day of the 4th month. I have 2 websites there that you guys could screenshot and take a look at, where certain arguments for and against the 17th day of the 4th month is represented. And since the verdict is out on that, I'm going to just go so far out. I'm not going on a limb, just to say that the same day, month, that the tables that God had given as a gift to Israel was broken, was the same month in which Nebuchadnezzar came and broke down the walls of Jerusalem, and we start the count.
Titus saw that the Jews were now weakened by hunger. He had his soldiers cut down all the trees in a 13-mile swath around Jerusalem in order to build a new rampart for their assault. And they began dragging their battering rams up again. By the end of the month of Sivan, the Romans were once again battering the Antonia fortress. And this time, the Jewish fighters did not have strength to resist. In the beginning of Tammuz, the Romans gained the Antonia fortress. Those who had been defending the fortress now retreated behind the high walls of the temple complex itself. As days passed, and Titus saw that the fighters in the temple complex were still holding out, he decided to raise the fortress and attack the temple complex directly. On the 17th of Tammuz, the wall of the temple complex was breached. Knowing the dire situation in the Jewish camp, Titus sent his spokesman, Josephus, to convince the Jews to surrender. The Jewish warriors turned deaf ears to his words and rejected him contemptuously from their presence. The battle now raged in the temple area.
So here we see from the pen of Josephus in the book Wars of the Jews that the walls in AD 70 of the second city of Jerusalem was thrown down on the 17th of Tammuz. Coincident? I think not. The stones that Moses had was cast down to the ground and broken because of the sins of that generation. They lost a gift that could not be retrieved. Even the second one could not touch it. Moses had to carve out old rock from a mountain, carry it up, get it rewritten, but it could never compare with the original. Just like the old city of Jerusalem cannot compare with the new Jerusalem, which comes down from heaven with every signature of God on it. But this one definitely was the 17th of Tammuz. So we have the 17th of Tammuz, the day of Moses, that's 100%. We have the month of Tammuz for the first destruction of Jerusalem, and the 17th of Tammuz for the second one. As I said, I am not going to force the issue as the Jews do, that the middle one was the 17th, but at least we can see a consistency there between the president set with the stone being broken and the walls of Jerusalem twice being broken down. And now we're going to listen to a feature song that will explain a few more things about that particular date as it relates to Jewish history.
Moshe went up to the highest heights on the mountain for 40 days and nights. As a gift he received 2 tablets of stone inscribed by the finger of God alone. But when it came down from Mount Sinai, Moshe could hardly believe his eyes. He threw down the tablets, smashed in half, 'cause the people were bowing to a golden calf. It happened on the 17th of Tammuz. That day's never been good day for the Jews, like a bruise on the year, nothing but bad news. I got those 17th of Tammuz blues. Well, Menashe was born of the royal seed, a direct descendant of King David. Chizkiyahu was his righteous dad, but somehow Menashe wound up bad. He filled the streets with all the blood he shed, read omens and did sorcery instead of praying to God. He put his idolatry right in the middle of the sanctuary. It happened on the 17th of Tammuz. That day's never been a good day for the Jews, like a bruise on the year, nothing but bad news. I got the 17th of Tammuz blues. Well, Jerusalem was a holy place where David prayed to the Lord for grace. It was there that Solomon's temple stood, and for hundreds of years it was filled with good. But the moral fiber began to decay, and the people strayed in every wicked way. So God made the call, the city had to fall, sent the king of Babylon to breach its walls. It happened on the 17th of Tammuz. That day's never been a good day for the Jews, like a bruise on the year, nothing but bad news. I got the 17th of Tammuz blues. To bring offerings to the Holy One 2 times a day, every day it was done. The Kohanim served Hashem with fear, and it went on for nearly 1,000 years. But a siege went up around Jerusalem, and they couldn't get any more livestock in. Eventually they ran out of sheep, and then the continuous offerings came to an end. It happened on the 17th of Tammuz. That day's never been a good day for the Jews, like a bruise on the year, nothing but bad news. I got no 17th of Tammuz blues. Well, the people were redeemed from their enemies' hands, and they finally returned to the promised land. But they still wouldn't walk on the path that was straight. All their hearts were filled up with baseless hate. So Israel got crushed by God in disgust, and the Roman captain Apostomus took a Torah scroll with the many names of the Holy One and sent it up in flames. It happened on the 17th of Tammuz. That day's never been a good day for the Jews, like a bruise on the year, nothing but bad news. I got those 17th of Tammuz blues.
As it is now, guys, every 17th of Tammuz is a fast, a very solemn fast for Jews in diaspora all over the world because of the events that consistently happened on that date. All starting with the breaking of the 2 tablets of stone. It's as if each tablet represented Jerusalem. The first destruction was one, and the second destruction was the other. Now that's just my view on it. It's not, I'm not saying that's what it was. Tisha B'Av. This is a totally different month. It is the 5th month of the Jewish year. So it follows Tammuz. The date that we're looking at on this one is the 9th of Av, a very particular date to look at closely. Tisha B'Av is the 9th of Av. Let's see what we can glean. Okay, so Numbers 13, 25 to 33 in the NASB, we have the story of Israel arriving at the promised land. Yippee, finally, we're here. But instead of just going in with full force, knowing that the God who just saved them from Egypt and Pharaoh and his armies and all of that, and feeding them with manna and all of that, there was hesitation. Noah was promised that I will bring your children into this land. At the point in time, Moses was standing in Canaan. He said the Amorites had not filled their cup as yet. But when I delivered them from that captor, he didn't mention it by name to Abraham at the time, but we all know it in hindsight, it was Egypt. He said, I'm going to bring them back to this land to inherit all these cities and so on and so on. These guys knew the stories. It was passed down from father to son, mother to daughter for generations. And now they've arrived just to step across. There's hesitation. Spies were sent in to check out the land.
The spies reports. When they returned from spying out the land, at the end of 40 days, they went on and came to Moses and Aaron and to all the congregation of the sons of Israel in the wilderness of Paran at Kadesh. And they brought back word to them and to all the congregation and showed them the fruit of the land. So they reported to him and said, we came into the land where you sent us, and it certainly does flow with milk and honey, and this is the fruit. Nevertheless, the people who live in the land are strong, and the cities are fortified and very large. And indeed, we saw the descendants of Anak there. Amalek is living in the land of Negev. The Hittites, the Jebusites, and the Amorites are living in the hill country, and the Canaanites are living by the sea and by the side of the Jordan. Then Caleb quieted the people before Moses and said, we should by all means go up and take possession of it, for we will certainly prevail over it. But the men who had gone up with him said, we are not able to go up against the people because they are too strong for us. So they brought a bad report of the land which they had spied out to the sons of Israel, saying, the land which we have gone to spy out is a land that devours its inhabitants. And all the people whom we saw in it are people of great stature. We also saw the Nephilim there. The sons of Anak are part of the Nephilim, and we are like grasshoppers in our own sight. And so were we in their sight.
What a report. I want us to understand that the men who brought this report were not little boys, inexperienced, didn't know a thing. These were chosen of the princes of each tribe, were these men chosen. These were high-ranking members in Israel, people who were looked up to. So what they said bore a lot of fruit. And the people decided to go with the majority rules. Yep, that's kind of the norm today. Everybody wants to follow the broad way that leads to destruction. And the way with the two, reject that. As far as we are concerned, what these guys just told us there, that's it. And we know what took place from there. But I want to ask a question before we continue this story. Why is it that God didn't just destroy the 10 spies? You know, and then all the people would have continued in and it will be nice and dandy, forget the 40 years and all that. Well, that's just a question. I haven't got the answer. God will answer that. But what I want to say is that it is evident that it is not only those who bring false prophecy or false doctrines that are going to be destroyed, but all who follow them stand to be destroyed with them. Continuing the story in Numbers 14, 1-10.
The people rebel. Then all the congregation lifted up their voices and cried, and the people wept that night. All the sons of Israel grumbled against Moses and Aaron, and the whole congregation said to them, "Would that we had died in the land of Egypt, or would that we had died in this wilderness. Why is the Lord bringing us into this land to fall by the sword? Our wives and our little ones will become plunder. Would it not be better for us to return to Egypt?" So they said to one another, "Let us appoint a leader and return to Egypt." Then Moses and Aaron fell on their faces in the presence of all the assembly of the congregation of the sons of Israel. Joshua, the son of Nun, and Caleb, the son of Jennifer, of those who had spied out the land, tore their clothes. And they spoke to all the congregation of the sons of Israel, saying, "The land which we passed through to spy out is an exceedingly good land. If the Lord is pleased with us, then he will bring us into this land and give it to us, a land which flows with milk and honey. Only do not rebel against the Lord, and do not fear the people of the land, for they will be our prey. Their protection has been removed from them, and the Lord is with us. Do not fear them." But all the congregation said to stone them with stones. Then the glory of the Lord appeared in the tent of meeting, and all the sons of Israel saw it.
Could you imagine God's disgust at this point in time? Here it is, he wished for them good and not bad. Brought them to the best of the land that he had been planting up for them for hundreds of years, just so that they could just enjoy the sweetness. How would a father or mother feel if you, after doing your best for your child, all they have to do is just open the door and walk in, and they say, nope, and start to rebel? Well, we know that's history now, but the key is, what date did that happen on? To tell us some more about that, we would listen to Rabbi.
JewishHistory.org presents Rabbi Beryl Wine's 5,000 Years of Jewish History. One video clip at a time. Now for a special clip, the 9th of Av.
Beginning in the 17th of the month of Tammuz, the Jewish month of Tammuz, we commemorate the fact that the walls of the city of Jerusalem were breached by the Romans at the time of the Second Temple. And for 3 weeks, there was hand-to-hand fighting throughout Jerusalem until finally on the 9th day of Av, the Hebrew month of Av, the temple walls were breached and they were set on fire by the Roman legionnaires. The 9th day of Av is historically a bad day for us, so to speak. It was the day that the spies returned from the mission that Moses sent them to see the land of Canaan. And they returned and gave a negative report. And the Jewish people rebelled. And in the words of the Midrash, the Lord said, "Tonight you cry for nothing, but on other nights of the 9th day of Av, you will have something to cry about." The first temple was destroyed by the Babylonians on the 9th day of Av. The second temple was destroyed by the Romans on the 9th and 10th day of Av. The expulsion of the Jews from Spain occurred on the 9th day of Av in 1492. The First World War began in the vicinity of the 9th day of Av, and the First World War was a disaster for the Jewish people in almost all respects. So there is much to be sad about. But the rabbis also said that on the 9th day of Av, the Messiah, so to speak, is created, meaning Jewish resilience is such that the 9th day of Av will also be a day of celebration, a day of positive commemoration, not just one of sadness. Jews mark the 9th day of Av as a fast day, and it has many of the aspects of the fast day of Yom Kippur to it. During the 3 weeks, we don't solemnize marriages. The 9 days that precede the 9th day of Av, Jews no longer drink wine or eat meat except on the Sabbath. We take sad precautions in order to remind us of what we have lost. Our rabbis teach us that it resembles a day of mourning. We do not wear leather shoes, we do not greet people, and we sit on a low chair. And most of the day is spent in the recitation of poetry regarding the destruction of the temple and the other sad events which have occurred to the Jewish people over our long history. It has also become a commemoration of the Holocaust in our time. So all in all, the 9th day of Av is the saddest day in the Jewish calendar. But immediately thereafter, Jews are filled with hope and optimism, and we begin to prepare for the great High Holy Day season, which will occur in a few weeks. Thank you for watching. I'm Beryl Wine.
The next day is the 10th of the 7th month, Yom Kippur.